Hello everyone, and welcome back to the channel. A couple of videos ago, I told you how the Series 8 metagame ended and what the best teams were at that time. A lot of people were saying the format was solved and the only thing worth playing was your favorite flavor of Venusaur. However, we are almost a month into Series 11 and have had a number of high-profile tournaments to see if that's really true. So today, I'm going to go over the results from the 6 biggest tournaments that I know of held so far, and talk about what the metagame looks like based on these results, as well as showing off any rental codes that I could find from these top performers. So, let's jump into it. The first big tournament that happened was the Pokemon Global Exhibition. This was an 8-player invitational tournament, and I think the context of this tournament is very important. Remember, these players did not have access to a ladder to test on when they were preparing, so a lot of them defaulted to the comfort picks that they had from Series 8. However, it's a good look at how some top players approached the beginning of the format. The winner, Leonardo, used the exact same team he used to finish second place in Players' Cup 3, and the fourth place player also used the exact same team. The third place finisher used a different version of Groudon Sun that also finished third place in Players' Cup 3. And I think everyone knew these were 2 of the top 4 teams in the format, I'd say, and they have continued to consistently top cut tournaments, although it is worth noting that the item choices and some movesets on these teams are quite flexible. Now, of course, this tournament did have 6 of the 8 players using Venusaur, and every single player using Zacian or Groudon. The second place team is quite interesting. It features an Assault Vest Venusaur and no Drought user, instead opting for a Sunny Day Sableye as the Sun setter. In a field where almost every other team sets up Sun anyways, I think this is fairly justifiable, but I haven't seen a Sableye do well since then, and I don't know if this team is as consistent against the non-Sun teams that you will inevitably face in most tournaments. The next tournament that I want to talk about is one of the first officially sanctioned tournaments that was held in person, held in Taiwan. We'll get this out of the way first. Yes, there were 2 Venusaur in top 4, both of which were using the variants of the Rainbow team that also won Players' Cup 3 featuring Kyogre. Another player finished 6-0 in Swiss before losing in top 16 and also used a variant of that. However, other than that, there were only 2 Venusaur in top 16. The standout Pokemon of this tournament was Eternatus. It finished in 1st and 5th place, and this Pokemon saw a lot of play in Series 10, so I think it's really cool that people are learning from their experience in that format and applying it to Series 11. Now, of course, it has a natural resistance to a lot of attacks from Sun teams, with the big exception of Precipice Blades and Behemoth Blade. These are responded to by Araquanid, which has Wide Guard for Groudon and also resists most of Zacian's attacks. We also see a Zacian team in top 4 that features a lot of Sun hate, including Prankster Thundurus, Assault Vest Gyarados, as well as a Landorus. It certainly is an interesting team and probably worth trying out, but also it's the start of a pretty consistent trend of Zacian Thundurus teams doing really well in what is otherwise a Sun-dominated metagame. The next tournaments that I want to talk about are the 2 Desafio LATAM tournaments that have happened in this format. The first was 140 players, and I actually finished in top 16 of this tournament, losing to the eventual runner-up. Of course, in the Venusaur watch, you see 3 Sun teams in top 8, with Narinbo and Sichet using Leonardo's team and Shinichi using the Sun Zacian team that Kevin Salvetto popularized in Series 8. However, the rest of top 8 is really interesting. Both the winner and a top 8 finisher used Zacian Blastoise variants, while Pedro's team features some of the more interesting choices. Brutus used something more along the lines of what I would expect on a Zacian Blastoise team. The Grimmsnarl and Landorus are still incredible at damage mitigation, and in this case, instead of using Venusaur and Torkoal to set up that really powerful Gmax residual damage, this team uses Cannonade. This concept was popularized by Alistair Sandover, who finished in 4th place of the Japan Nationals qualifiers back in Series 8 with a Blastoise Thundurus Zacian team, and he has a fantastically well-written team report that didn't get as much attention as it should have because Series 8 was just ending. This report, of course, will be linked in the description. Since the start of Series 11, we've seen a lot of teams expanding on the ideas from this pretty novel team, and Brutus's Desafio team was no exception. Going back to the Desafio results, we also see a Lapdog team in top 4, and we have the open team sheet for this team, and I personally think that there are better ways to build Zacian than Lapdog at this point, but it certainly sees some success every few tournaments, and so it is definitely a very valid team and a team that you should know your matchup against. And then finally, the other really cool team in top 8 was Domingo, finishing top 8 with a Kyurem white team, and he also has a team report for this team that also will be linked in the description. Like I mentioned in my last team report with Vishy featuring his Kyurem white team, I think Kyurem is a really interesting anti-meta pick, and it's great to see it have some more success. This past weekend, there was another Desafio tournament, and this time the Venusaur Watch sees 2 of the top 8 teams, including the champion, using Leonardo's team, and then Ryan Lassetto rounding out top 8 using a Venucool Zacian variant. There were also 3 other Zacian teams in top 8, including Zero using the team Brutus used to win the previous tournament, and Anubis using a Rain Zacian variant. I know that Rain Zacian saw some play in the middle of Series 8, but kind of dropped off. It never really saw top-level success, so maybe this will see a little more success, although I still think that it's a little too fair. It doesn't quite do enough, but that being said, we've seen a couple other Kingdras do well, which we'll get to in a minute. And so the Pokemon, however, that really rose to prominence this week was Gastrodon, which saw a lot of play across a few different tournaments, all on Zacian teams. Given that a lot of Sun teams often max their Venusaur early, they have a hard time preserving it until the endgame, and Gastrodon can often cause problems in that situation. It also resists Zacian's main attack in Behemoth Blade, and also pressures both Landorus and Thundurus, which have grown in popularity. On top of that, one of the best neutral types to hit Zacian with is water, and in this top cut we see 2 Kyogre teams, a Blastoise, and a Rain team, so clearly it was the play for this tournament. Finally, I want to talk about the Cinderace Calyrex Shadow team that finished in top 4 here, because a different player also finished in top 8 with the exact same 6 Pokemon in the previous Desafio tournament. Calyrex Shadow had a decent showing in Players Cup 3, but kind of fell off after that, and I think it still is the best hyper-offensive restricted available. However, Hyper Offense by nature needs to constantly adapt to have game plans for every single common team, and that was really difficult when the most common teams all had 2 dark types on them. However, I think this version, it may be the one that can find that consistency because it has had these 2 tops in a row. I also want to add that if people start running these niche, generally lower base stat total Pokemon that do well into specifically the Omnipresent Sun variants, that bodes really well for Calyrex Shadow, since it can power through those choices in a way that it couldn't for bulkier, more generalist Pokemon. For example, I think we've only seen 1 Porygon 2, and that's only on Sun teams, because it just isn't that good into other Sun teams, and that to me is a sign that the metagame might be disrespecting Calyrex just a little bit. Next up, we have the Victory Road Series 11 Challenge that also happened this past weekend, and the top 8 watch for Venusaur has 2. Now, it is worth pointing out that those 2 players did get first and second place, but also that the top 16 results are absolutely filled with Venusaur players that did not quite convert in top cut. That being said, top 8 also includes a number of strange restricteds. At the very top, we see Joe UX9 winning the tournament with Yveltal, but it is a Sun team, and it seems like you can slap Venucool on anything and make it playable. In particular, Yveltal sort of consolidates the roles that Charizard and Umbreon have on various different types of Sun teams, but is that really worth not running Zacian? I don't know about that. Lele did release a rental code of his second place team if you want to try that out. Again, the items and movesets on these 6 Pokemon vary from team to team. I am personally not a huge fan of Foul Play or Trace on Porygon 2, but the rest of the team seems pretty reasonable. The rest of the top 4 includes a Colossal team that you're going to see more of on the channel soon. Colossal has generally been at its best when it is disrespected, and after the team was the team to beat entering Players Cup 3, we saw people beat it really consistently in Players Cup 3. But Player VGC had a slightly different take on the team to help deal with those common game plans that we saw. We also have a Weakness Policy Kyogre Specs Kingdra team that did that. I just have no words. I don't know what to make of this team. We also saw Reshiram in top 8. It's one of my favorite restricteds aesthetically, and it matches up really favorably into Sun, so I'm glad it saw success. Of course, it is also taking advantage of the really powerful screens and residual damage from Blastoise. In 7th place, we have Pokéraf, who also wrote a team report for his take on the Zacian Blastoise teams, and you can check that out in the description if you're interested in reading more about it. To round out top 8, we have 2 Japanese players who use Calyrex Ice variants, which I think is a restricted that has sort of been forgotten about. They used 5 of the same 6 Pokemon, and the difference being Amoonguss or Tapu Fini, so if you're looking to use Calyrex Ice, this seems like a good starting point. And then finally, I want you to take note of the Rotom Heat Zacian team that is in 9th place, because we're going to be seeing a lot more of that real soon. The last tournament that I want to talk about is a Japanese tournament called the Liberty Note Championships. To qualify for this, you either have to do well enough on the ladder or do well in their Terra Rune challenges. And the top cut is just a who's who of Japanese players. The Venusaur watch is at 2 this time, and the dominant core of this tournament, however, was not Sun, it was Zacian, Gastrodon, Rotom. We see it on 4 of the top 8 teams, with a 5th team using a Blastoise instead of Gastrodon. And this is what I meant earlier when I was talking about people using lower base stat total choices that are specifically tailored towards the metagame, because these teams are really optimized to beat Sun and Thundurus Zacian teams specifically. I believe UB Slow popularized this core back in Series 8, and of course they were one of the top finishers in this tournament. They have a team report that is in Japanese, but Google Translate is generally pretty good for these sort of things, and that will be linked in the description, of course. Shandy Holmes also used a Blastoise Zacian Rotom team and also released a rental code for their version of it. So now, this tournament was open team sheet, at least for the later rounds. I don't know about the first day. And the team sheets were revealed on stream if they were playing. However, they were in Japanese, so it might be hard to translate them. If you are interested in watching any of these teams play or deciphering the Japanese versions of the open team sheets, make sure to check out Liberty Note's YouTube channel. There's a lot of high quality gameplay that you can enjoy. So that's a pretty good overview of what teams have seen success recently in tournaments. As you can see, all the Sun teams that were doing well at the end of Series 8 are still doing quite well. However, the metagame is more diverse than a lot of people expected. We've seen picks like Eternatus, Reshiram, and Kyurem do well, and we've also seen new ways to build both Calyrex forms to deal with the changing metagame. We also see the rise of a couple different builds of Zacian, and it still just has the raw power to beat Rogue options while being tailored to beat Sun as often as possible. I hope this video helps you along your Series 11 journey. If you enjoyed this video, please like and subscribe, and you can become a channel member now and contribute directly to my next regional entry fee. Shout out to Kenny and Nick, my current channel members, and until next time, I will see you all later.